So you guys know Phil Hartman?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
North is the lone film appearance by Bryn Hartman.
Oh, no.
Who was Phil's wife and eventual murderer.
Yeah, who killed him? Oh, my God.
What? I didn't know about any of that.
So much bad juju around North. Because I don't know. Well, you guys might have noticed that Scarlett Johansson is like a little girl in The Family with John Ritter.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I recognized her immediately. I had no idea that she was going to be in it. And I was like, this is a little girl, Scarlett Johansson. But not only that, Jussie Smollett is
What?
in it.
Where?
Of fake hate crime fame.
Of course. I mean, also TV show. But yeah, no, hate crime, totally.
Right.
I did not notice that. Wow.
Just a cursed movie. Cursed. Hello, and welcome to Unwatchables, the podcast where two intrepid moviegoers put ourselves through the most unpleasant of cinematic experiences so that we can answer the question, if we could, would we unwatch this? Yeah, just saw it in the credits. I assume it's not a different Jussie Smollett.
If it is, our sincerest apologies
Other Jussie.
Yeah.
to that Jussie Smollett.
Yeah, all the love for Jussie. Well, anyways, I am Marc Dottavio.
I'm Seth Troyer.
And today is a very special episode. First of all, because we do have our first guest, our good friend Boaz of the band The Comfort Brothers. And also he helped out a little bit with a little independent film production that Seth and I were involved in.
Absolutely. Ronald wants to be a barber.
That's right. I think I wasn't the pirate, but I was damn close.
You were the mummy who was also a mobster.
Oh, the mumster. I think that's okay to say.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How's everybody today?
Well, it's good to have our first guest. How exciting. How exciting.
Absolutely. And this is also a special episode because this is a little bit different than the other movies that we've talked about so far, which were disturbing or punishing in some way. But these two movies are not so kindly received by certain people. And in a way, this is kind of like our tribute to Roger Ebert, because what these two movies that we're talking about today have in common is they are both family/children-oriented comedies that came out in 1994 and inspired some of Roger Ebert's most vitriolic reviews, which we will read some excerpts from.
Which, your mileage may vary. These could be very punishing for certain people. And I would argue that certain parts of them are. Yes.
I would too.
There's an objective lack of genital mutilation in these films that I think might put them on a different tier of cinema than other films that are seen as unwatchable. However, I would also say I was not told this would be a Roger Ebert tribute. And
yeah, I wasn't either.
I'm fit to be tied. You bring that guy over here, we'll have words. But moving on.
Well, I should say maybe the late Roger Ebert. So we're not going to get any pushback from him now.
Oh, he's dead.
In 2022, but you give it 6 years, you don't think the critics are the first people coming back? I mean, we don't have to get into the whole cryostasis thing, but we can move on. North was a very interesting film in that I didn't realize it was called Castle Rock, the production company.
Yeah.
I just thought that didn't make any sense. But
the same production company that birthed Seinfeld.
I believe there's a Stephen King connection there.
There is, because two of his most successful films, this Rob Reiner meathead character, Stephen King.
Absolutely. Let's start this out actually by talking about Rob Reiner, because he's the director of North, and up until this point, he had one of the more impressive winning streaks, I think, in mainstream cinema history, certainly in modern history. I'm just going to read through the list here just real quick. These are all consecutive films that he released, starting with This Is Spinal Tap, then The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and then he hit a large concrete wall called North. So if nothing else, this kind of ended Reiner's kind of unbroken string of critical and audience successes.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know he had done all those at this point.
Yes, including 2 Stephen King adaptations.
I didn't know about A Few Good Men.
Right after North, he did The American President, which went over fairly well. And then it is just an amazing, several decades of kind of crap. So North might have been the beginning of the end.
I can't think of any iconic film he did after North, and that might just be my ignorance. But yeah, that's a fun fall. I was reading something he said. He just wanted to make what he called a fun fable, and I don't think it's very fun. That might be what I circle back to when we open the floor for this. It's not a horrible film. It's not even a very bad film. It's just not a fun film for me.
So Ebert kind of single-handedly branded this movie as a colossal disaster. And in fact, his 0-star review was so infamous that he titled his book of bad reviews after a line from it. And I'm going to read the passage that's quoted for this book that he released. So famously, he said about North, "I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it." He goes on to say that it's one of the most unpleasant, contrived, artificial, cloying experiences that he's had at the movies, and concludes that it is one of the worst movies ever made. So what I'm curious about is it really that bad?
The only thing that bad is his career and the horrible stillborn child he spat out, which is modern film criticism. Because this hyperbole, which I'm showing right now, it's solely his fault. And this movie isn't worth seeing, nor is it worth complaining about to this degree.
All right. Well, we got some hot takes then on film criticism and Roger Ebert. Do you have any thoughts or history with Ebert, Seth?
Yeah, it feels like maybe he was having either just a bad week or what happened post Ebert was happening to Ebert, which is this sort of realization that you don't want to just say something was kind of bad and didn't really do it for you. What really sells something, what really gets your voice out there is you with your little YouTube thumbnail being Matrix 4 killed babies or something. It totally killed my child.
What were they thinking?
So, yeah, the hyperbole thing I get. But I don't know. I mean, I guess just to go to my opinion of the movie is I do think it's just kind of, not that great. I don't think it's it's borderline insulting. That's the real thing. I mean, if anything, if you want to kick this movie, it could be for being culturally insensitive.
Oh, you think?
Elijah Wood is going all over the earth and stuff, and just basically stepping on every culture he can and stuff. But I don't know. It didn't strike me as this is totally obtuse and totally just from another planet, like The Room or even Freddy Got Fingered, which we reviewed earlier. I don't know. What do you think, Mark? Where do you land?
Well, first, let me just give a little tiny plot summary here for anyone who is lucky or unlucky enough to have never seen North. Basically, it is a children's movie. I think it really has a kid's sensibility, or at least what it thinks kids will find funny.
Yeah, me and Boaz were saying that it was a Disney movie. It feels like a Disney Channel movie, if anything.
Yeah, a Disney original, maybe even a Nickelodeon original kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we have Elijah Wood who plays a little kid who's almost like a kind of Max Fisher figure from Rushmore, where he's an overachiever at school. One of the things that I thought was actually kind of funny was his little performance of Fiddler on the Roof, which reminded me of the whole Rushmore, what is it, Rambo or First Blood or something that they do a play of.
Oh, yeah, he does a Vietnam play.
Yeah. And he has these parents played by Jason Alexander and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I'm not sure how close this was to Seinfeld. I think it might have been.
Castle Rock.
during it. Yeah.
It was right there.
94, yeah.
I mean, that was the joke the movie was founded on. And like, that's the level of humor you get from it. It's like, you see this thing, you recognize this shape. It flashes, it sparkles. It's very unimpressive.
Basically, he's just mad that he thinks that they ignore him, and he gets a lawyer to help him find new parents and like kind of emancipate himself from it. And there's this whole subplot where it starts this whole movement of other kids who are kind of holding this over their parents' heads and getting leverage over them because they're afraid their own kids might leave.
See, I like all that stuff. I was a big fan of all of that. Like, if anything, that's like the most interesting part of the movie.
Right. The most disappointing part is that would be an interesting film where like he gets back to America and the entire political climate is just child-centric and all of the parents are second-class. And they hint at that, but it's really just a dumb chase scene at the end.
Yeah, they kind of just talk about it.
His best friend is like the best actor in the entire movie. He's like 8 years old, and he's playing this child politician who's trying to use this at like this issue of him finding new parents as like child rights, and he's going to like somehow take over the earth. And he like does the most amazing, like if you were doing like a Dick Cheney biopic, you would flash back and this kid would be like Dick Cheney or something. He's like really scary. He's
like the corporate bad guy. If he just wasn't a little kid, this is exactly like the dialogue and character that would be in some movie. Like, I don't know why I keep thinking of Sam Rockwell and Iron Man 2. Maybe that's just because that was like when they started just having like these kind of bland corporate villains instead of like a supervillain. Anyways, but the bulk of the film is Elijah Wood trying to find new parents and going to all these different locations and all of these celebrities making cameos and being silly, and then him deciding he doesn't like them and trying out the new ones. I'm going to push back a little bit about the one kid being the best actor, because I think Elijah Wood is a really good child actor.
He does do a good job. I just really like the Antichrist boy.
Elijah sells a bogus concept with his it's an earnest performance, but he's nothing compared to like that Goblin Boy. The Goblin Boy sells the movie if the movie can be sold. That and his series of arcade cabinets, which they glisten and they glow. There's one where there's like a Super Nintendo control over a man's face. It's pure pop art. That office is wonderful. And he has a chair that's like 5 times the size of a human man's chair, just emphasizing what a tiny little goblin nightmare he is. It's perfect set. And maybe that's one of the stronger things, is there's a lot of really good heightened reality sets, which leads up to the culmination of what a really mediocre movie it is. But it's very dreamlike, we'll say. When we get to Dan Aykroyd world, it does have this nice like sequins, bright pink colors, giant stretch caravan. It's wonderful. As wonderful as it can be.
This is a pure fantasy, like just light, frothy silliness, or at least that's what it's trying to do. I would say, I don't know, the first like 15 minutes or so of this movie, I was kind of already mounting a little of a defense, like, oh, this is the worst movie ever made. I thought it had kind of a nice, like goofy, cartoonish energy to it. You know, like lots of really quick cuts, like to little throwaway jokes and stuff. And there was certain stuff that I did actually laugh at. They're usually mainly like little throwaway asides. I like the Alan Arkin as the judge, kind of explaining what a hearing is.
Oh yeah,
yes.
It was like a redo of his performance in Little Murders, almost. If you're a fan of that, he's like this detective that has an existential breakdown while asking for cheese and cookies and describing the state of the law. And it was very much the same performance, maybe for a different audience.
And I kind of enjoyed the Dan Aykroyd part where they first end up on this kind of ranch, just because it gets so absurd. Like when they break out in that musical number out of nowhere.
It's wild.
Here's a complaint. You've got Reba and a blues brother, the one who's still alive, and you just do a Bonanza cover. You don't just do like Rawhide, like, because everybody loves their callbacks, or make your own song. They could have wrote a song and just turn up the Weird Al Bonanza. That was the first little drip of dissatisfaction in that film. Like, why are we doing a Bonanza? But back to you, Mark.
Well, no, I'd agree that in general, all of the big names in this that play the parents don't get a whole lot to do. They come and go really quickly, and some of them I would say are even wasted, that they don't get to do much of anything at all. I mean, not that like Kathy Bates is known for her like comic, timing or anything, but it's like, is she just there so that we have someone that we recognize? And like Richard Belzer pops up in that part when they're in Alaska too, or they're with the Eskimos.
That's right.
And it's like, I guess just the fact that he's there is supposed to be funny because he doesn't get to do anything.
They needed more of that, especially in today's climate. If we're going to remake a movie, it needs to all be throwback jokes so people can point. They did a little bit of that. They should have just went for it, had Cassie Bates break his leg. And then everybody could be like, oh my, I get it. That's great. Missed opportunity, but maybe in the remake we'll do that.
Yeah, now that I think of it, maybe that's just because Rob Reiner had already worked with her on Misery.
You just had to put her in. Yeah, she is in this for like 2 seconds, it feels like.
Yeah, but so is Abe Vigoda. Like, he just gets a couple lines and they send him off on a float. This doesn't really do any favors for Jason Alexander and Julia Louis-Dreyfus either.
They are mostly in a coma.
Yeah, they lose custody of their kid because they're in a coma, but that is construed as them having no empathy for their child. So this causes this whole political uprising.
When you put it like that, it's brilliant, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I do like how cartoony it all is. And it feels like Roald Dahl. It feels like some little snappy story, like it would be like a paragraph in a Kurt Vonnegut like book or something. But it's just not fun enough to carry like a whole movie. That is kind of the thing.
Some of the warning signs started popping up for me, even in the opening scenes that I mostly enjoyed. A big one was, we haven't even mentioned that Bruce Willis is in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Frank.
Actually, this is the same year that Pulp Fiction came out. So I don't know. These were maybe the kind of roles that movie like rescued him from in his like post Die Hard days.
This was it.
Yeah. So like this is still before Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense and the stuff that kind of rose his star again. And he's kind of the guy who he plays a different person that he meets at every different family that he visits, or is he a different person? Just so he gets to wear all these different get-ups and stuff.
He's some kind of mystical person. He initially meets him in a rabbit outfit, which, it's just the movie's just Donnie Darko.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And he keeps following him around from family to family. Bruce Willis is there. If he's in Alaska, Bruce Willis is there. If he's in Africa, Bruce Willis is there.
Yeah, which, gosh, I would love that, personally.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess it depends which Bruce Willis.
I'd be threatened.
Like 99, okay, I'll take that. I think best part of this is that given the ending of the film, his entire influence is so pointless. There's no magic to it because it's entirely contrived by a grieving North's brain because he can't have the relationship he wants with his parents while he's in a furniture store. So what is the significance of this guardian angel bunny man? None whatsoever. He's a figment.
He doesn't even give good advice.
No, he's supposed to be a comforting a stone of force amongst all this chaos, and he's not. He says dumb quips, and I get it. For me, Bruce Willis isn't that charismatic even back then.
He's like, his advice is always just like, because he'll walk up and his new shtick, because they're on a beach, is like he's a beachcomber, and then they talk about the situation at hand, and then Elijah Wood's like, yeah, but what should I do? And then Bruce Willis is like, I don't know. I'm just a beachcomber, And then that's about like every conversation with him. He like doesn't actually give him good advice. So he is just this mystical presence that follows him and doesn't help.
This script I know exists, and the coward Rob Reiner must have burnt it. And there was a book this was based on, but the book is also a lie. Each time he sees him, it's true. There is no dream. This is reality. But the advice that originally in the script that I know exists, Bruce Willis says, get over yourself. These people are prepared to finance your future. Get over yourself. Each time he tells them to settle, the kid does not settle. And to the point where he does go to the orphanage, which Alan Arkin brings up as the punishment if he can't find a family that he likes. Then at the very end, Bruce Willis adopts him because he does exist, and he's a billionaire, even richer than all the other people. Then he dies of a congenital disease, which is why he was stalking him, because he wanted an heir to take over after he died. The North is left alone with all of this money, and he finances the New World Order that his blonde kid that he left in America was starting, and he becomes a horrible dictator.
Boy, well, I'm glad one of us read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It took some time.
It's really long. I didn't have enough time to read all of North, the book. But
They certainly changed it.
Yeah, they turned into a book called Infinite Jest, but I've only read synopsises.
But yeah, I mean, Bruce Willis is basically here, I think, just to kind of try to have some kind of through line that keeps recurring. Like, it's just a structural thing. But it was, especially in the early parts, it was his narration that I really hated. Like, especially his delivery of it is just like so indifferent. It almost made me wonder if there was supposed to be narration in this, and if they like someone, it sounds like someone like woke him up in a hotel room like a few weeks after they were done shooting and were like, hey, this movie isn't really working. We're going to try to nudge it up with a little like voiceover narration. And they just put the pages in front of him. Like, it made me think about Harrison Ford's narration in like the original cut of Blade Runner, where he's clearly just like, he's clearly just has to do this.
When he saved my life, I don't know, it's some robot shit. It doesn't matter to me.
That's totally what it was. That's totally what it feels like.
That's a prophecy of Bruce Willis's current career. He just shows up behind the blue screen for a couple minutes and farts out a couple lines.
Fun fact about Bruce Willis in this movie, he, like John Candy, who was originally set to be cast in the Dan Aykroyd role, did not like the script at all and was inclined to pass on the movie, but was convinced by his wife at the time, Demi Moore, to work with Rob Reiner, having just come off of shooting A Few Good Men. So you have the success of A Few Good Men to thank for Bruce Willis ending up in this movie.
And Demi.
Jesus.
The expectations for this like clearly were way out of whack, because this was the new Rob Reiner movie, not the new like Nickelodeon original like showing on Friday night film that it like aspires to be.
Right.
And, you know, you guys were talking about the parents and just like the whole, you know, this tries to have a big lesson and everything. But I mean, did you think it ever even took that seriously? Because we get just one dinner table scene where they're just talking to each other and ignoring him. And then he collapses to the ground and throws a fit. And then they just act like normal, concerned parents. And that's all that we get as far as how terrible these two are, that he needs to escape.
No, it's supposed to be like a shtick, of course, that like we as adults watching this can see that like, oh, he's overreacting like kids do, and he's going too far, and he's going to learn his lesson. And then kids watching this movie are going to go like, yeah, at least at first, be like, my parents don't listen to me, let's go for it. The lesson is not very like forward in the script at all. It doesn't feel like the kids are going to learn anything. They're just going to just like, they've watched a bunch of families fly by them, and then the movie is over. As it goes along, Elijah becomes less and less likable, because it just becomes more and more glaring that this is such a like weird, like a kid trying to disown his parents. Like, it's just like so if anything, like a little like upsetting and distasteful to think about. Of just like, there's plenty of kids who would love parents, and the whole movie is about a kid like not going around and interviewing parents. Like he's got so many options. Like, fuck you, Elijah.
There's no real trauma in his life, and there's nothing wrong with most of the parents that he interviews. Maybe with the exception of the Hawaiian family that want to exploit his
crack.
His crack, as it is so eloquently put in the film.
My crack is going to be shown at every airport?
That is true, yeah.
The rest of it, yeah. The real problem is that it does have a very clear moral, which is raise the stink and you will get what you want. Because his parents wouldn't have cared about him unless he divorced them. so to speak, got emancipation. The whole trajectory is that they love him and hug him because he put them through this crazy child revolution hell. And if he hadn't, he would not have gotten what he wanted.
With the big caveat being that we get the whole "it was all a dream" thing at the end. But I want to save that for a little so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. Those were the things during the early part that were kind of raising flags for me. That, this does clearly have like a very, kid sensibility, but there's also a sense that this is what a bunch of adults thought kids would think is really cool and funny, like from their perspective. And I'm not sure that it always is.
Yeah, they seem out of touch.
Yeah, especially the way they keep shoehorning in these little like jokes for the adults that, like when he has like this whole hotline set up for parents who are calling in who want to like audition for him. And they're like, oh yeah, he believes in God and evolution. And, don't get him started on the Warren Commission. And it's like, all right, so no kids in the audience are going to get those jokes.
No.
And I'm not sure if any of the adults are going to laugh at them either.
Yeah, it is always interesting to see because it's such a box office goal to aim for, is the kids movie that is also entertaining for adults. And it's interesting to see one that just fails quite consistently on both fronts. Like, just like, nope.
Yeah, so I would say through like when they meet with Dan Aykroyd and they have the weird musical number and everything, I was still ready to kind of like defend this a little bit as like harmless. And then they get to Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
And boy, the like rest of the middle of this movie is just like a parade of ethnic caricatures that it just thinks is hilarious. And boy, I don't know, I didn't.
Does it even think it's hilarious, or does it just think that if you go to this place in a movie, this is how you show it? You're not going to be there longer than 5 minutes, so don't you dare make them human beings. And in its defense, no one in this movie is human. And I don't see it as like this huge apocalyptic flaw of shittiness, because every movie was like that for kids. A lot of movies that were for adults were like that and still are. And that's why I don't really see it as such a shitty movie. But that doesn't excuse just poor Abe Vigoda in another just death comedy, not unlike Good Burger, where his whole character was that he was dying. I think that was just his career back then.
He's just a guy that we need to shove off into the sea.
Well, you got to get work where you can get it.
I guess the excuse is that it's a dream. Elijah wakes up from this crazy dream that was North, the movie.
Just so no lazy narrative device goes unturned.
Yeah, and like, oh, you can't say that we were racist in our depiction of Africa. It's this stupid kid who only knows Africa from his school book or something.
Because kids are racist.
But they still have money. We're trying to make movies for racist kids.
And it's like it's still like treating it like that's cute, Yeah, exactly. It's like still treating it like, oh, isn't it cute that kids have like such a skewed racist version of reality?
To be a child again.
But yeah, it's like the Eskimos are just all about sending the old people off on ice floats. Poor Abe Vigoda again. He sees the Amish for like a second and they do some lame pun about their names and he's out of there right away. Goes to China. And okay, come on. Was anybody else just like really nervous when he arrives in Africa?
Oh.
And
I was feeling nothing at that point. That whole montage, brain and soul were gone. I was just eating pizza and forgetting where I was.
Yeah, he was just on the ground, face down.
Giggling and pissing.
Yeah.
No, what? No, but there's a truth to that. What happened? I don't remember. It was a very dull movie.
Well, yeah, the Africa part, basically the whole joke is that some topless woman is his mom and he's just staring at her breasts and has just some kind of line like, well, I don't know, if I live here, I'm never going to get any homework done. And that's Africa for you.
Oh, I forgot about that. That sucked so bad.
Was there any like collar pulling? Because that's such a great collar pulling line. Like, I'm not gonna get any homework. Yeah, or something like that. Check, please.
He's Woody Allen all of a sudden.
Yeah, I remember that joke. I just imagined there was something else that happened that I missed, and it turns out I was overestimating the movie again in the past.
Yeah, it was for the best that you went into a coma, much like George Costanza at the beginning of this movie.
I woke up in the Met. And then, what was with China? Why did he leave China? I don't know.
Because he'd have to get one of those haircuts with the ponytail.
Yeah, and that would be...
Because that's the one thing anybody knows about China.
That's rolled gold right there. That's amazing.
I'll admit, this got a very, very cheap laugh from me when he goes to France and starts going through all the channels in horror, seeing that it's only Jerry Lewis on every channel.
Oh, I loved that. That was actually really funny. I
laughed about it, but I don't know if I can intellectually justify just because that's one of the more harmless stereotypes against French people is, they just love Jerry Lewis.
See, I guess I just never knew that. It just seemed like I just like, maybe that was just new for me. I was just like, what a silly thing. The French like Jerry Lewis a lot.
Wearing a beret and holding a baguette at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was perfect textbook. They understand they're French.
Yeah, no, that joke would have worked better if it was actually a non sequitur and not based in a, Germans love David Hasselhoff type joke.
Sure.
No, I mean, building off that love of Jerry Lewis, if he was just watching a totally nonsensical comedian, like, oh man, even more Phyllis Diller, these French. That would have been
So anyways, during this whole succession of stereotypes, we even get a terrible joke about like MSG and Chinese food. Like, let's go get some Chinese food. Maybe the MSG will calm you down, which is another, I think counts as a stereotype at this point, because that's actually not true.
Yeah, that's a thing that a kid would never know to lampoon or be naive about. That's like an adult racist thing.
It's also just a non-joke.
Mm-hmm. They just are yes, as you know.
Yeah, and speaking of non-jokes, the last family he ends up with, of course, after we get through the whole succession of, racial caricatures, finally he's back in a white suburban paradise with a perfect family. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. There's nothing that we discover, secretly that is wrong with them. They don't even get any attempts at jokes. We just get John Ritter being not funny in something, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Was he trying to be funny, though?
No, they don't even give him anything. Yeah.
It was just a wholesome porn. It was all just, how wholesome can this family be? They got a white picket fence. They go to picnics. Well, why any of it? What the hell?
They could have made the joke that, they could have made the whole joke being that they're so perfect, it's over the top and insufferable. But no, they're just great.
Yeah.
There's no turning point other than he just grows tired of his search.
Yeah, he leaves for no reason besides that the movie needs to continue. He's like, I don't know, something just doesn't seem right.
And it just seems like he isn't motivated by realizing that he's wrong. It's just that the movie taps him on the shoulder and tells him he needs to go home, basically.
Is that your weasel in the back?
Yeah, what is that noise?
That's not my weasel. I'm going to have to go adjust some weasels.
Obviously, we can edit all of this out.
Well, it's a running bit we have on this show that the audio is fucked up in a different way every single time we record.
Yeah, at least one of them is.
The weasels are going ape shit.
Boaz's pet weasel is opening beers in the background.
I killed that thing with a beer. I got a 15% ABV, and I took that ferret out to sea. Have we addressed the John Lovitz situation?
Oh, I forgot about him.
I feel like he's wasted in this movie, too, because he can be very funny, and I don't think gets almost anything funny to do. Maybe a little bit at first in this.
It's great that he shares the screen with the Antichrist boy, though. The little goblin boy, they're so funny together. He's always picking on him.
So I am going to disagree a little bit with you guys about this kid who starts out as this little journalist that is, I don't know, it's weird because there's some jokes in this that's kind of based in this Bugsy Malone type thing where it's little kids acting like adults, and that's the joke.
Oh, Hawk Jones, some of that Hawk Jones shit. You know, have you seen that? It's like a mystery where it's all child actors, but it's a film noir from like the 70s.
Like Baby Brick.
Something like that, yeah. It's like that. So they can't totally die, but they are still shooting at each other with guns and being like, Hawk Jones, if you kill one more person, I'm taking away your badge. So it's all the stereotypes of like an action movie, but acted out by like 8-year-olds. I don't know why they made it, but it's real.
But in this movie, it's only like 2 or 3 kids. So it's not like a whole world where kids act like that. It just seems like another kind of random angle or joke that they put in. And I hated it. All of that stuff with now there's going to be this whole movement, and now we're going to manipulate voting by having the parents do what their kids want, and we're going to make John Lovitz president. And there's all these long, just endless scenes of scheming and him acting like an adult. And, I thought it was awful.
It's just gags. If it would have built up to the kidpocalypse, it would have been lovely. Children of the Corn at an unimaginable like scale and death toll. But instead, it was just, what if Dad had to clean your room? It did feel like it was made for kids in that way. Where like, oh, that would be crazy. Because anybody else, it's just a gag. Move on. Let's talk about Clifford. Kill them all. Hate them.
It's not over yet.
But yeah, I didn't find any single thing in any of that whole subplot to be funny. And then once Elijah Wood leaves his last family, it kind of even attempts at comedy kind of stop there too. And the whole thing just gets bogged down in trying to like resolve the plot,
Right.
and get back home in time and thwart the villain and learn the moral. It got to be just like a slog in the latter part of this for me.
Yeah, I mean, we were mostly just eating pizza and talking by the end of this movie. It's definitely one of those. You got to just like look away. And maybe that could be why we have like a more, me and Boaz have more of a pleasing memory of it.
And then there's this henchman that they decide is going to kill Elijah Wood, that if we kill him, then it's only going to help our movement because there will be a backlash against it. And so we have this henchman who goes running around actually firing a gun at Elijah Wood in public, like over and over, just trying to shoot him to death in this stupid, silly kids movie.
Total failed opportunity. Once again,
Yeah.
they kill them all. They should have had like a little bit of the Warriors, a little bit of maybe like Death Race, where every kid was out to kill him. And because of the crazy new American laws, all these kids could like buy guns. So this like kid militia is all after North. It would have been madness. That would have been the best movie ever. It'll be like a Danger Kids at play. But instead, it's this one portly gentleman just traipsing around a merry-go-round for no reason. Like, it's all been said.
I mean, you've described at least 3 different movies that I wish I had watched instead of North. So that's good.
This is only the 4th episode we've recorded, so it's not super likely that Rob Reiner's listening to this. But Rob, if you are, remake potential in that idea, I think.
Yeah, Northwest.
North by North.
And then, like we said, then we get this whole, it was only a dream. And he gets to go back home and his parents are actually concerned about him. Or was it a dream? Because he has a coin in his pocket that he found in the dream. Just so that there's another like old hoary trope they could throw in.
Yeah, because it's more complicated. It's Donnie Darko. It's a tangent universe that was created. Once he met the bunny in the mall, Bruce Willis, it started a tangent universe.
He took the road less traveled and Robert frosted it all the way.
Thanks a lot, Rob Reiner.
I think it's like a 10-minute movie. That's all that there is to it, and it's stretched full of tropes, and it's dumb. And again, to go back to it, the worst part is that it was brought to our attention by us being everybody because of the Ebert. Because I think it's just a perfectly mediocre film. Most of the complaints I have about it, I think I would say about like Vampire Dog, A Talking Cat. Well, those are kind of good. But the average children's film, they're not built to be good. they're built to reach that runtime. And it's just it's a shame that it's now cemented in the public consciousness as a horrible film when it should have been forgotten decades ago. And we're part of it.
I do think it's pretty bad, personally.
I don't think it's that bad.
But well, I mean, it's like it's a movie that goes along and it's lit fine, and there are scenes that occur. But I guess, yeah, I fall somewhere in the middle. It's at least like kind of an interesting bad movie watch. But I do agree that like it was just for kids, and it's just a stupid kind of failure. But like it is just a kids movie. I don't think it's worth like coming down super hard on
It's
it.
interesting as like the Rob Reiner career killer.
Yes.
And that's a little strong too. But that's the most interesting thing is that marks it downhill. Everything else, I think there's a lot of similarities between it and other films to take away from its novelty and overall worth as a shitty film.
This movie killed one other career, at least besides Rob Reiner's, seemingly, which was that of screenwriter Alan Zweibel, who did go on to write another movie of Reiner's that Bruce Willis was also in. The name's escaping me.
Yeah, trust me, you haven't heard of any Rob Reiner movies after The American President.
You know that thing where like you have a conversation with somebody and then like way later you think of a more clever comeback or something you wish you had said?
Yeah.
George Costanza does that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good tie-in. Zweibel claims in a piece that he wrote for The New Yorker in 2013 that he once ran into Ebert and said to Ebert about his sweater, "I hate that sweater," and that they both laughed. He waited until Ebert died to share that story, so who's to say? But I thought that was a funny tidbit.
What a weenie. He should have took out a gun and said, "I am Superwoman."
And cut his head off with it.
Yeah, that would have been way cooler. I agree.
I hate. Yeah, that's good for him. That's a beautiful moment, really.
It makes me so sad for everyone, but I understand also.
Well, are we supposed to say if we would unwatch North?
Sure, why don't we start with Boaz? Would you unwatch North if you could?
Yeah, all right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
You, Mark?
It's hard to say because I rarely think like, oh, I wish I just hadn't even watched that in the first place. But maybe if I had gone back in time with the knowledge that I have now, I perhaps would come closer to wanting to unwatch this than anything else that we have talked about so far.
I'll tell you something, Mark. I saw the Nostalgia Critic review of North when I was a mere lad of 14 years old. So if I unwatched it, I would have had the same experience already years ago. That's where I really stand. Back to you, Seth.
I guess I would. I mean, I would never recommend this movie. Like, the second those words would come out of my mouth, I'd be like, what am I really even recommending here? But I don't know. I guess I'm like, take it or leave it, man. I'm with Mark on this is probably the closest to and a rather unwatchable, rather skippable, at least skippable, like extremely skippable movie that has some clout in the world.
It does half of the work itself. It just rewinds itself while you're watching it.
The thing about this movie is that it has not developed like a cult following throughout the years in the way that our next movie has. I'd say it has rather been forgotten and would be totally forgotten if not for Ebert's review. But Ebert also did not like Clifford, which he gave a 0.5-star review to. So I guess he liked it more than North.
Well, here's where I really will start to disagree with Mr. Ebert, because I'm a huge Clifford fan.
I would go so far to say he's a Clifford apologist.
Anyways, Clifford, here we are at a real fucking movie.
Let's hear it from the man himself before we go any further then. So from Ebert's Clifford review, which, to be generous, I guess, he does say that that he kind of considers the movie like a mystery, that he's not even totally sure why it doesn't work, but that he didn't find it funny. Basically, if I just read here from his review, he says, what we have here is a suitable case for deep cinematic analysis. I'd love to hear a symposium of veteran producers, marketing guys, and exhibitors discuss this film. It's not bad in any usual way. It's bad in a new way, all its own. There's something extraterrestrial about it, as if it's based on the sense of humor of an alien race with a completely different relationship to the physical universe. The movie is so odd, it's almost worth seeing just because we'll never see anything like it again. I hope.
Not a bad review.
Yeah, I mean that tracks. That lines up. Yeah, this is definitely in a pre-The Room exists world. I guess that's true. Seeing Clifford is always going to be a startling, strange experience. I don't know if it goes to the level of like extraterrestrial, because I personally just do find a lot of it genuinely funny. A lot of it does work for me. I do enjoy like Charles Grodin and Martin Short like clearly going at it here, which it took me a while to figure out with this movie, because I had a long history with it where it was nostalgic, because like my parents love this movie. They've loved it since I was a little kid. I don't know where, because it was a flop, and it's not like a DVD you just like bump into, but it was, yeah, it's like notoriously hated, and I didn't know that at the time, but like we would watch it constantly, and it would freak me out because the ending is like very intense and very strange. And then slowly I was getting into like bad movies that like, oh, like I'm looking for like real shitty movies. And I realized Clifford was on like the list, and like I enjoyed it on that level for a while. But after more recently, in the last like 5 years of watching it, I've definitely like just come around to like, I think this is two comedians making a very strange movie that I kind of enjoy.
Boaz, do you have any history with this? Did you watch this like growing up?
I watched it growing up when I was 20, and Seth made me watch it.
Yep.
That counts.
But I have not had the same level of indoctrination. You could say I am more of a clinically pure observer of this film. And that being said, it's good. It's just a great battle of these two damaged psyches, these two horrible men, one of whom is a little boy, just destroying each other. Watching it now, I feel like the conclusion of the film is too fast, and it could go for like another 2 hours. I think it had more of like a Heaven's Gate kind of setting to it. It would be better too, both in length and time period. But otherwise, like, yeah, it's pretty okay.
If he actually made him ride the dinosaur ride like 100 times.
Yeah, and like the music changed, and maybe there was like an internal monologue talking about like how he physically changed from the ride. But I think that it's one of the weirdest capitalizations of the dinosaur craze of the 90s. Like you got like We're Back, which I would, other than this movie, say is one of the weirdest dinosaur cash-ins. But it's still there though. I mean, you take out the dinosaurs, this movie falls apart. You can't just substitute any roller coaster. Terry the scary T-Rex. Harry, I'm sorry. I think it's Terry. It is Terry.
Larry the scary Rex.
It's super integral. And I think that's what makes him believable, is that even though it's clearly this ghoulish 30-year-old man, that is the only way to represent the ghoulishness inherent in small children. He pulls it off. It's real. The way those kids look at you, they want to make you drink hot sauce. They want to take your wife. It's real. And it's a success, this movie.
Well, Seth, do you want to do a little like brief just description in case there's anyone who's not familiar with Clifford?
We open on, it's in the future. I forget if they say what year it is.
Year 2050.
Yeah, which is funny. And it's like Martin Short is working as a priest. He's like an old man now, and he's at this futuristic boys facility. It's like I forget what the name of it is, but it's something like a house for rowdy boys.
Wayward Boysville.
Wayward Boysville.
Yeah.
That's what it's actually called. And he goes around and he like meets the new kid, basically, who's like the new bad kid.
Who's Ben Savage, by the way, from Boy Meets World.
Oh, yeah.
He's the budget Savage if you can't get Fred Savage.
And this winds up being our framing device for the whole movie, that he sits down the new kid at the Wayward Boysville, and the new kid's like, no, I'm telling you, I'm a bad kid. I'm just a bad kid. And Martin Short turns to him. Martin Short, his name is Clifford in this, hence the name of the movie. And he says, no, I was way worse. Let me tell you a story about when I was your age. And the movie begins on an airplane, and Martin Short this is the whole shtick of the movie. We see Martin Short sitting with his parents, and he's supposed to be a 10-year-old boy. He's clearly a 30-something-year-old man dressed up like a 10-year-old boy, but everyone is treating him like he is a 10-year-old boy. And that is like constantly going to be like one of the parts of this movie that like both makes it very like humorous for people, or just probably confuses and like maybe makes people sort of back away. But he has his little companion who is a plastic dinosaur named Stefan. His parents are clearly upset with him and totally tired of his shit. We slowly find out that Clifford is an enfant terrible. He's like, he drives everybody nuts. They're on their way to Honolulu, and he eventually finds out that they're flying over Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is where Dinosaur World is, which is the theme park that he's always wanted to go. It's the only place in the world that can make a boy like me happy, he says. And he goes up and essentially like asks his mom, who is drunk on the plane, to like let him up into the cockpit and hang out with the captain. I imagine he would be a very wise man with a cleft in his chin, is like his way of speaking. And he gets up there and he essentially sabotages the plane and forces them to land in Los Angeles. And luckily in Los Angeles, the Clifford's parents can pawn him off, because they won't let him back on the flight because of what he did. They can pawn him off on Uncle Martin, played by Charles Grodin.
The great Charles Grodin.
The great Charles Grodin, who I love. And Uncle Martin is also the architect who designed Larry the Scary Rex, who is the, I guess, centerpiece of Dinosaur World, which is the place Clifford wants to go more than anywhere in the world. So he is all for this. And we see that Uncle Martin is, he has this whole like subplot with his fiance, Sarah Davis, who I forget that actress's name, but I love her.
Mary Steinberg.
I think it's Steenburgen, but
Steenburgen.
Whatever we want to do with that.
And she loves kids, and it's like a perfect setup because she loves kids, and Uncle Martin clearly hates kids or doesn't give a shit about kids. And once he finds out that Clifford is coming, he says yes, because he can like bring Clifford around in order to like prove that he is a fun kid-loving guy, which is a weird thing to say actually now that I said it, but that he is a family man essentially. And
hijinks ensue.
Clifford is just bent on going to Dinosaur World and constantly sabotaging Uncle Martin, blackmailing Uncle Martin, eventually sending Uncle Martin to jail at one point because Uncle Martin says he won't go to Dinosaur World because of another thing that Clifford did. But they have these incredible like back and forth argument conversations that I think were partially improvised. That's sort of what Clifford is.
Well, yeah, and I am kind of like Boaz in that I never saw this when I was growing up. I have no like nostalgia for it or anything. It was a movie that I'd heard about a lot, as being something just totally like misconceived or bad, before I ever actually saw it. So when I did first see it, years ago, I remember being pleasantly surprised, like, oh, this is kind of weird and everything. And I love Charles Grodin, and I'm a big fan of Martin Short just in general. He hasn't been particularly well served by movies. I think maybe, I don't know, like Three Amigos or something might be the most like successful film that he's actually been in. Usually, it's usually more like on stage or on talk shows or doing Jiminy Glick or something that I think he's just like one of the funniest guys out there just as a comedian. But he's had a rough time, I think, with like translating that into starring vehicles in movies. And this kind of has a feel to me almost like a Saturday Night Live movie, like something that would be based on like a character he came up with, and then they fill it in with this big like backstory and plot and pathos and everything. And there's times where you can see like he is playing Clifford, and then sometimes he's just like Martin Short doing little bits, like dancing and singing about San Francisco, or imitating like somebody with a stroke, where I could kind of like see him peek through. And I think this is best when he's playing Clifford like a full out like psychopath, where like with a gleam in his eye and being polite and the big grin. And then he like puts people's lives in danger, and he's incredibly selfish and vindictive. And that's when it works best for me, is when, you know, he brings that edge to it, which Charles Grodin plays off of so well, because he brings his own kind of edge to it. Like he seems a little bit dangerous, but also he like underplays things kind of nicely alongside him. Like he really thought about how to give a performance in a movie like this.
It's a terrific battle of two psychopaths. And until the very end, you think it's going to end in blood. I mean, he's going to use that dinosaur as an implement of Charles Grodin's rage. He wants to go on Scary Larry, and he does. And maybe it will be the last thing he ever does. But in that moment, you see them. They both realize each other as these apex predators, and then love takes over, the familial bound.
Indeed.
Well, it's like you're saying in the beginning, Charles isn't like the long-suffering Uncle Martin. He just wants to use him to prove that he's capable of a relationship with his girlfriend. They're both just these bad people. The only reason it really works and isn't just like another boring thing, I think, is the improv you're talking about, Mark. And that by having this old actor play this child, when his face goes slack, it's terrifying. That scene where Charles Grodin just keeps telling him to act like an actual child, like a normal little boy, I think is like the best example of that.
And he does an impersonation of a normal boy, which is just hilarious.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite moments, is the faces he starts making there, where I can really see like Martin Short using his like physical comedy. But it is weird because you have that undercurrent going on, but I don't know, a lot of people's stumbling block with this movie is like, oh, it's so weird that Martin Short is playing a 10-year-old, and, you know, he's not like de-aged or anything. Right. Like they just clearly put him on like lower seats than everybody else, and that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, he's got little shorts on, you know.
But I thought it was weirder, just like exactly what the movie was trying to be, because when it starts out, you know, we have the opening credits where there's like these illustrations and this score that for the life of me sounds like a ripoff like Danny Elfman score.
Yes.
Of like twinkling piano and soaring strings and everything. Like
it has like little child choir.
Yes.
Like music half the time. I really like the score.
Yeah, and I do think this is trying to be kind of like an actual family movie to an extent. That it does have a moral at the end and a lesson, especially with the whole framing device, is like he's imparting this wisdom. And then on the other hand, you have this really like hostile, you know, back and forth between him and Charles Grodin. And I'm not quite sure where it lands with all of that stuff.
Sure.
Well, I guess we keep on talking about the ending, and maybe we should like touch on that a little bit. It does eventually, after like a bunch of like back and forth where like Clifford basically ruins Uncle Martin's life, and he eventually finds Clifford and puts him in a straitjacket and takes him to Dinosaur World. You want to go to Dinosaur World? We'll take you to Dinosaur World. And you can tell like he's lost it. Like at this point, he does the ride, which is crazy. And I forgot to look up some stuff about this because I was like, they actually seemed like they built a real ride. They actually have like animatronic dinosaurs at Dinosaur World and stuff, including this gigantic like Larry the Scary Rex, which is eventually like where the climax happens, which Uncle Martin basically wants to kill him on the ride by speeding the ride up and sending him on the ride just like eternally until he dies, and it causes Larry the Scary Rex to fall over, and he has to eventually choose to save Clifford, and you really like buy it that Charles Grodin like believes that he may be saving Hitler or something at this point. Like he's so begrudging of it.
That climax is so weird to me because it's long too. Like they spend a long time going through this dinosaur ride, and then this big like kind of it's adventure like rescuing set piece at the end. Like it turns into this big like special effects sequence, which really seemed like I don't see how that fits in with the rest of the movie. And then when they get to the end of it, it basically goes unresolved. Charles Grodin leaves still like upset with him. Then we go back to the framing device, and that's just like the lesson. And then we get this little postscript where he's like, oh, but then I got a call to be the ring bearer at their wedding. And then everything was fine. It like they skipped over the whole lesson and the reconciliation. They just go straight to, but see, we have a happy ending too, so we can bring back the faux Danny Elfman score and then fade to black at the end. And I don't know, this was all over the place for me with stuff like that. I was honestly getting kind of restless through like the like whole third act of this movie. It was starting to like test my patience even.
Oh, in what way?
Well, just pacing wise, like nothing really funny was happening anymore for a really long time.
No.
It's just all this special effects stuff, and I wasn't invested emotionally in the story or anything. So I was just kind of like shifting around in my seat. But really, the movie as a whole, I feel like this time watching it through, did not enjoy nearly as much as I did the first time.
I'd agree with you.
So we might have a little bit of a split.
I liked it, but it wasn't the same. Some movies aren't like that. You watch them over and over again. There's less of you and more of the movie left in your body. But with Clifford, I don't know. I want to say that the ending was the culmination, like kind of like a Night of the Hunter thing, where like the evil faces off. But also, it doesn't actually. You're right. They just kind of wander off, and then they're fine. I like to think that they just both saw the evil in each other's eyes on that ride, and that's what you see. They both, the shallow fakeness of Charles Grodin, he sees in Clifford. Clifford sees the evil he brings out in people, that this grown man will let the T-Rex eat him. He almost does. There's a second there. He just let him fall into that robot mouth. I thought that's what we were supposed to walk away with. But it isn't really explicit. And it does feel kind of clumsy at the time.
Yeah, and I like both of your guys' readings here. Like, I would love to think of this as like a subversive, dark psychodrama between a little kid and a grown guy, with a little kid played by a grown guy. And also, I think Seth's kind of perspective is, we have the comedy, but also there is kind of a real relationship or realization here. And I could see how this movie could become like a cult classic among like, certain circles. But for me, it just felt like it was never like as weird as I wanted it to be.
That's a good assessment.
That's fair.
All the stuff I liked the most was like the more demented and over the top and like further this pushed it, like the better. But so much of it is just like him doing like pranks to him. Like he makes him drink Tabasco sauce, and he puts lipstick on by accident, and he tricks him to leave the house and has a house party, and there's a boss with a wig that embarrasses him, and he ruins his business presentation. And that's all just like conceptual stuff that's not like just bizarre interactions between the two of them. And so I didn't find most of that stuff like funny. And then it has this whole, plot element where he has the deadline for his public transit project, and his wife's boss is hitting on her, and he's jealous. And I'm just like, what?
That's the worst part of the movie, yeah.
And that doesn't have anything to do with Martin Short. And it's all just making me think that it's trying to almost fit too much into a box of this is an early 90s like family film, and a little too afraid to go all the way with being as like deranged as I would have liked.
I agree with you. I think that the hijinks are just the trees, but the forest is that this little boy is trying to drive his uncle insane so he can steal his wife. That's the most bizarre part.
That is true.
And to miss that is to miss the madness of the film.
He is like sexually interested in his fiance.
He wants to destroy this man's career, as the kids say. Like, that's his entire goal, is that he didn't get to go to Dinosaur Land on day one. He's going to ruin Uncle Martin's life, his career.
And fuck his wife.
His love life, his sanity, all belong to Clifford. That's bizarre. But I do think that gets lost for gags. And it is at the end in the same class as North, even if I think it's a better film. They're 90s kid-centric movies that failed to capture the imagination of the audience.
Well put, and I think it's appropriate they came out in the same year because they do seem like this was the state of this kind of movie at the time. At least as far as what it was trying to capture. And there is enough weird stuff in it that it put people off. So, I mean, I could say that much about it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, tonally, it's all over the place.
It's like at some points it's trying to be like Pee-wee's Big Adventure with like, stop motion, like cartoonish stuff. And then it's kind of,
comparison.
Yeah. And then it's kind of like sappy family drama. And then it's Martin Short's like Saturday Night Live vehicle or something for this character.
Right.
This movie was almost marginally less weird because it was shot in 1990 and was originally intended for release in 91, but kind of got put on ice due to some financial problems at Orion, the studio that put it out. So between 90 and the year before it came out, 93, somebody had the idea to film that whole 2050 old priest like framing thing that was conceived of like long after like the movie wrapped. So kind of weird.
So it was even filmed in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Poetic.
Damn.
I was thinking that this could have been like a really dark parody of the movie Problem Child. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that. It was this movie with John Ritter and this kid that I think the kid might be a foster kid or something, and he keeps going from family to family, and they keep getting rid of him because he's like so terrible and mischievous.
Okay.
And John Ritter is trying to make it work, but he gets into fights with this kid, and there's a lesson at the end. And that movie came out in 1990, and so I was thinking,
whoa, this is basically North mishmashed.
Right. And I mean, it's basically this. And I was thinking, well, that would be cool if that's maybe what inspired this movie. It's like, we're gonna make this the like dark version of Problem Child. But then I learned that this was actually shot the same year that Problem Child came out. Like, so maybe that wasn't intentional. But my fantasy version of this movie would probably be like a direct, deranged version of that.
Yeah, I do wish it would sometimes go even further, but I think it is one of those things they didn't plan on. Almost, a lot of it comes together with the music for me, actually, like in the post production. It's like even like simply putting like Tabasco sauce in Uncle Martin's drink, like the way the soundtrack works with that. For me, for some reason, does hammer it over to this next level of like more than a prank. It's like this antagonistic blow to Charles Grodin.
Totally.
Yeah, I see that. It's just too bad that like there wasn't a better payoff. He just like yells and runs and starts dumping stuff in his mouth. I was ready for something else to happen, like talking to, bizarre voice, or I don't know, spill it on the lady's white dress. Not that any of that's any funnier.
The problem with these films is that they needed to be worse, at least in box office theory. The only way I can see to fix, quote unquote, these movies is to make them darker and maybe more adult-centric. And I think the only reason they made any money is because people took their kids to see these movies. If they would have like actually went full tilt in either direction with North or Clifford, who wants to see an R-rated Clifford or North other than anybody here? Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to see an NC-17 North, and I'm not sure what I even mean by that.
Okay, yes, definitely. I do see this as in like the same kind of world as like the Cable Guy or like even Punch Drunk Love for like these regular comedians kind of taking at least one step too far in like quite often in like a dark direction.
Clifford, anyway, for sure.
Yeah.
John Lovitz was kind of to type, I feel like. He didn't really go outside of his Lovitz zone in North. As a comedian, yeah.
And, you know, before we're done talking about this, I should call out some of the, like, rather lazy or, like, mean-spirited jokes that did not age very well from this movie. Like, I mean, I know there's one part where Richard Kind is, like, insulting, like, a fat woman, and that's just the whole joke at the airport. Yeah, that's literally
the whole joke, yeah.
And it's like,
time.
Yeah, if you don't remember this, you will now when I bring it up, when Charles Grodin and Mary Steenburgen are fighting with each other, and she goes, "Oh, come on, I can spot a phony a mile away," and then walks up what is supposed to be like a really masculine looking guy in drag or something, saying like, "Hey, I can't find my dog," and she's like, "Oh, sorry, we haven't seen your dog, miss."
And that's the whole thing, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know what the lead up was. I didn't even make that connection that she said that. I just remember they were looking for the dog. This couple was like, I guess that's happening. All right, man. I check out with both of these movies. I will say a lot of my observational bias is just 5-second blankness of the mind. So
there is stuff I found funny. So maybe end on a positive note, though. Like the really silly stuff, like anytime they cut to Martin Short just like playing a recorder, that's just a funny image to me.
Yes.
And when at like the airport, all these people are like saying like, "Where's like my dog and my surfboard?" and all this stuff is gone, and we just cut to him in the back seat of Charles Grodin's car, and there's just a dog with them, like he stole all this stuff that Charles Grodin had no idea.
That was a pretty good sight gag.
Yeah.
No, all of Charles Grodin's mega acting is just perfect because it's just his eyes slowly getting too big to contain all the rage in his head as he's looking at this little guy.
Oh my God.
That's the funniest stuff to me.
The way he plays rage is just why I go back to this movie. I just love watching Charles Grodin blow up.
Yeah, he's one of the best like guys who lose their temper and are hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Like this movie would not, to the extent that it works, it would not work nearly as well if they had somebody who wasn't like Charles Grodin in this role. Like this really could have been bad if they didn't have somebody like him, like fully committed. It reminded me of Rip Torn in Freddy Got Fingered. Like someone got him to commit 100% to some fucking nonsense, and he did it.
I think that like the ideal version of this film, just a stage play, just Martin Short and Charles Grodin, no background, just spotlight, and it's just them ad-libbing as they fight in character. 3 hours of that. That's all you really need. No distractions.
We need a new segment where Boaz just like turns these into movies that I want to see.
Punch these bad boys up.
Yeah. Anyways, to wrap up Clifford, I wonder if part of the problem with Clifford is that, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about Rob Reiner before getting into North, and whoever the guy is who directed Clifford is done like nothing else of note.
Yeah.
So that couldn't have helped.
Yeah, everybody involved. Like I even looked up the guy who wrote the music. He didn't really do much either, which, yeah, it's just a dead zone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, anyways, I don't know if I would. I'd maybe unwatch the second half of this movie. Maybe once the novelty wears off.
It's a movie that's all set in just boring LA, and then the last 10 minutes you get a dinosaur ride with robots, and you don't want to remember that. That's personal. That's your life. I feel you there.
That means something went very wrong.
Okay.
What that means.
Yes. Yes, it's the metastasis. It's the disease going throughout, and it's horrible. But there's a beauty to it too. I don't think Clifford's great, especially on the second watch. I would never want to unwatch it. Hey, how about this? I'll unwatch it the second time because the first time I enjoyed it so much. That's cheating, but I'll do that.
That would be cool. I would like to see it for the first time again.
Well, second time again.
No, yeah. I mean, you're our first guest, but you're also the first to use the unwatch option in that way. So great.
Top of the world,
That is
Mom.
fair.
Broken new ground.
Look at that.
So you're definitely you would not unwatch it then, Seth.
Me? Of course not. I love it.
He's going to put it on again as soon as we're done here.
I think I hear it right now.
I'm raring and I'm ready to
Clifford
go.
2. Watch for it in theaters.
I can hear the recorder playing right now in the background. Let me tell you what, though. Okay, I do have one favorite joke in this whole movie that has nothing to do with Clifford or anything, really. But it's when Charles Grodin is getting interrogated for his bomb threat. And he's like, what, you think you're going to get me to admit something here, keeping me under this hot lamp? And so the guy reaches over and like turns the lamp down and everything gets really dark. And then he's like, well, okay, now I can't see anything. And they just kind of adjust the light for the interrogation light for a little.
I missed
And
that.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
That was the hardest I laughed in the whole movie.
Look,
For
I don't
sure.
want to make this about lighting.
Anyways, Boaz, anything you want to like promote or anything now that you have this massive platform?
Oh my God. Book me at your show. SoundCloud, Comfort Brothers. Book our band because the other guy in the band, he wants me to. I have no horse in this race. I don't even play music. I just happen to be in a band somehow. So book the band, please. That's Comfort Brothers at Bandcamp. That's something, man. I can tell you that much.
Man, that is PR you can't buy.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity of time and to let me borrow this microphone. It's very cool.
Oh, you got it.
Yes, we do want to thank you for participating. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you. We'd love to have you back sometime, probably.
Oh, sure. Maybe. We'll see.
We need to start racking up, friends of the pod. Who uses that? That's a thing. We can't say that probably. I think that's someone else's thing.
No, you just made that up, and we still shouldn't use it, though. Unwatchables is produced by Tony Scarpitti, hosted by me, Marc Dottavio, and Seth Troyer, with artwork by Micah Kraus. You can find Seth and I on Letterboxd under Marc Dottavio and Sloth Troyer. You can also check us out at unwatchablespod.com for links to our Twitter and Instagram, or support us on Patreon for bonus content and to have a say in what we watch. Thanks for listening.